He's Sean Payton, the Saints head coach, Continental Tire Coach's Corner. Coach joins us now. I was just talking about being on the podium when, handing out the Lombardi Trophy. What do you remember after you guys won when you were on the podium?
Well, I think, it's kind of that euphoria of enjoying the ultimate team success at the end of the season. There's so much goes through your mind just in regards to the journey to get there. And after experiencing it all and talking to young players about, what you think it's like, it's 100 times better.
But when somebody says, what's it feel like? It feels like that's an easy question to ask. But we are curious that, you waited all your coaching life for that moment, and you end up beating Peyton Manning, and you won the Super Bowl, and you had an onside kick that people thought you were probably crazy attempting, and then all of a sudden you're up there, and then somebody says, hey, well, how's it feel? Because you don't know it until you get up there.
Yeah, it's 100 times better than you might even imagine. You're so happy for the players. All the people. That year was unique, and that time frame was unique because it was also a little bit more tied to the city with regards to the rebuild post Katrina, and that made it that much more special. But I do remember it's the only time where you don't get to address your team after a game. Even the NFC Championship game, when you come back in, you have that moment in the locker room where you're together and you're prepping for next week, and you have some announcements, and you're going to a Super Bowl. But that game ends, and the buses all still wait. There's 5 buses, but one by one, players and coaches end up in the locker room, cleaned up, showered, and getting on the buses. So there's not that last time as a team.
Yeah.
And I do remember very clearly the bus ride from the stadium to the hotel. And there is a little postpartum in that we're not playing anymore. Like, you just want to keep playing because you're into such a schedule and you're enjoying the process, that each day of preparing for the next opponent, that there is that moment where you want that bus ride to last 2 hours instead of 25 minutes or a half an hour.
That's interesting.
And yeah, you do feel like, man, it's over. There's no more games to play. There's no one else left.
He's Sean Payton, the Saints head coach, joining us, Continental Tire Coach's Corner. You got a chance to see Anthony Davis in person. Could you use him on a football field?
Man, I'd sure like to try. He
had Jimmy Graham, but could you see?
Yeah, I think Alvin would have a little bit of a beef if he even walked anywhere near. We're only separated by 200 yards, and yet we might share the cafeteria periodically. But I've really, over the years now, and look, I get to maybe 3 or 4 games a year to watch, and the other night just happened to be courtside, and it's amazing to see the athleticism and the size, and with Anthony, he's gotten bigger, and there's a presence with him close to the basketball hoop where you can feel his physicality, and I don't know in year one that was the case. Certainly the athleticism was present, but each year he's gotten better, and man, they're playing such good defense right now. I in that series early on, especially the games in Portland. I mean, regardless of how they were shooting, you just felt like the stops they were getting on defense and the transition points they were getting. I think at this time of the year in that sport, that wins. And the night you don't shoot as well from the 3, or you don't shoot as well from the free throw line, or whatever, the way they're playing on defense, I think is going to serve them well. Not only in the series they just played, but I think in the upcoming series, and certainly there'll be challenges if in fact it's Golden State who they have to play. But I think Holiday's a different player as you watch him right now than last year or the year before, and it's exciting to watch.
Let me talk about the draft. You made some headlines. Now I've been paraphrasing you, but I want you to put it in your own words. I think it was how many. What do you think of this quarterback draft, and who's going to be a franchise quarterback? And once again, paraphrasing that, it felt like if anybody emerges as a franchise quarterback, it'll be Sam Darnold. Is that fair to what you were saying?
Yeah, I think so. I think this. We were just going through last year's first round. And if you took out last year's first round and you went through the selection with each team again and then asked the question, would they do it again? Would they make the same selection? I think you'd have 15 to 18 to 20 no's. I mean, this is last season, the last year's draft. There's a few to be determined, and then there'd probably be 8 yeses. And with regards to the quarterback class this year, I mean, this is just us, the Saints. The guy we had graded very high last year was Mahomes, and a year prior Wentz, and you just keep going back, Luck, and I don't know that I see that player in this class, and I think
I thought you were taking Mahomes. Was there any thought of getting Mahomes? I thought you were gonna get him.
He was a target at 11. He was definitely in our 11 cloud. The only thing that happened that we weren't expecting, although you kind of aren't surprised anytime when you're selecting that early. When it got down to Lattimore, you keep this bubble right on the board in front of you, and you're on pick 8, and you might have 4 in this bubble, and then one goes and another goes, and then here it was pick 10, and we have 2 players in the bubble, Lattimore and Mahomes, and now Kansas City traded up to 10 and took Mahomes, which pushed Lattimore to us. But once we were at pick 10 with those 2 players, we were assured one of those 2 players.
But if they took Lattimore, though, if Kansas City took Lattimore,
we'd have taken Mahomes.
Okay.
We'd have taken Mahomes. And had both of them, let's say Kansas City just took player X, we'd have taken Lattimore. We had the higher grade on the corner.
Okay. Have you talked to Drew Brees about that possibility?
Yeah, I think he understands, like anybody, that the importance of just scouting and looking closely at value, and I think it wouldn't have been as much as, hey, we need Drew's replacement right here. We just felt like this was a really, really talented player.
Yeah.
And time had sorted itself out as to when he got to the field, but we try to do that each year, and certainly there's a sense of urgency, I think, for every team to have that position right, because they touch the ball so many times, that there's so much that goes into that position. And, we had high grades on Garoppolo, and when he got selected, it just wasn't in the wheelhouse with where we were picking. But I do get guarded with the idea, well, if we don't get our quarterback at 11, then we'll just get the next graded quarterback. Well, what if the next one isn't someone you love? And that's where I think you sometimes can get into making mistakes, and you're strictly reaching for need as opposed to, who do you have a conviction on? And that first round a year ago, when you go through it, man, there are a lot of players in that first round. I mean, guys that you thought were, safe picks, that the jury's still out, or the team wouldn't do it again if they had it to do over. It was about you're batting 300 last year in the first round.
Yeah, you can't do that, especially if you're the Cleveland Browns.
The totality of it all, and when you do that, you put it up, it's alarming. Then you start looking at, well, why? Why didn't this guy make it in year one? Why wasn't he successful? And I'm sure injury played a part with a few of the players, but we were fortunate with Lattimore at 11 and then Ramczyk at 32. There's probably 5 other players than those 2 in round 1 where you'd say were, man, surefire. Team would do it again the same way. And that's the alarming part of the drill. And so trying to find the right value, but also the vision for the player in your offense or defense.
If you're the Browns, what would you do at 1?
Listen, I think let's start with the quarterback. If they love one, you got to take one.
But would you take Darnold, knowing that they need a quarterback? They got Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah, I wouldn't be afraid of making that selection because I know, look, it's 1, but that's the cost of sushi. That's just the expense. And it's a first-round quarterback. Let's look at it that way. And I know it's pick 1, but let's say Darnold's the only quarterback in this year's – let's hypothetically say he's the only one that's going to become a successful NFL quarterback.
Yeah.
And you go a different direction, and then at 4, fall back on a quarterback that, let's just say, doesn't work out. I think that's a risky proposition as opposed to I'm taking the quarterback and then I'm going to really look closely at this next available player, whether it's I don't think the running back gets there, whether Chubb gets, whoever's graded next defensively or offensively. I just think that you got to secure that position if your conviction is such on the player. And I think Darnold's going to have a real good pro career. I do.
Final 30 seconds. If I had a vote by the coaches to get rid of the kickoff, still keep the onside kick, but get rid of kickoffs, how do you think coaches would vote?
Well, I think the coaches would vote against. I think where we're all at as a league, I think in this is pretty easy. I think we're at a place where, man, we have to, number one, we have to not eliminate the opportunity for a team to score, kick an onside kick, recover, and score. I would argue some of the most exciting games in the last 25 years, 30 years have been that. I can remember as a young, I'm dating myself now, but back when the 49ers in the 70s had John Brodie and Gene Washington, it was the weekend of the Immaculate Reception. So 20 minutes before the 49ers lose a close game to the Cowboys, Franco Harris gets the ball deflected. He scores a touchdown, and all of a sudden the Steelers advance, not the Raiders. This was like the worst case scenario for the 2 Bay Area teams. I'm a young 49ers fan, probably 8 or 9 years old. They have a 13-point lead, I want to say. Roger Staubach enters the game at Candlestick at halftime, leads the team back, and they score, onside kick, recover, and score. No different than how Seattle beat Green Bay. And so that element, you don't want people at the 6-minute mark leaving games because they know even if you score, you immediately have a possession then on your own 20 or 25-yard line. So we have to protect that element of being able to get the ball back so I can score twice within 2 minutes, if you will. And now it's looking at the play or the event that takes place when that onside kick's not happening. Can we? And I think to Troy's credit and the league's credit, and now being involved in it directly on the competition committee, I think within the next month we're sending a group of people together for a good day and a half to look at what other options in regards to alignment, what other options we can do in regards to what we now know as a traditional kickoff. What can we do with that play that keeps it exciting? And right now it's a play that's 5 times more likely to you're going to get injured on that play or have an injury or an event. So I think that the discussion's great. I think whatever takes place, ball's on the 25-yard line, unless you choose to onside kick, or we're going to create more of a punt, but we're going to brainstorm on that for a while before we get to where we're just flat out eliminating it. And I think that's the right thing. So I think the coach's vote today would be no, but it would be with an asterisk saying, hey, let's explore ways to save it.
Have fun on Thursday night, Sean. We appreciate your time as always. Thanks for joining us.
Dan, thank you.
That's Sean Payton, Saints head coach. Continental Tire Coach's Corner, brought to you by Continental Tire. Exclusive tire of the Dan Patrick Show. For more information, ContinentalTire.com. Continental Tire, for what you do.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.